hopefully you're enjoying the quote unquote salmon cannon. That's what people are calling this thing. Fish tube, salmon cannon, whatever. It's actually got a very practical purpose, right? It's trying to lift fish such as salmon who have to swim upstream to spawn over the tops of dams safely. Obviously, we don't want them going through the turbines, and it's difficult for them to scale a gigantic dam that we have built. It's very old energy source and infrastructure, and it's clean. It's probably one of the cleanest of all these that we're going to look at. Even the construction of it uses materials that aren't as damaging as rare earth metals and such. So you can see we have agricultural uses for dams as well. We can use them to control a floodplain. Once you build them, they're super cheap. They are zero emission. They don't give off any type of greenhouse gases. They last a long time, and their efficiency is decent. We're going straight from mechanical to electric. There's no transfer of heat. Anytime we heat up steam to spin a turbine, we lose so much in that step. And if you've ever been to Eagle Creek or Geist or Morse, we can use dams to provide leisure and recreation activities. So we have a firsthand experience with that right here in Indianapolis. So what's bad about them? Well, if you dam up a river, it's going to flood behind the dam. That's kind of the whole point. It's called a reservoir. And when you do that, you're going to destroy the ecosystem around it. I'll show you a gigantic dam built in China, and they had to move over 1 million people out of the way just to build this thing. I will show you that we've had problems with sediment building up behind the dam. That makes sense. Rivers carry sediment, and over decades, you're going to get sediment that deposits and affects the operation of the dam. We are running out of places to put dams, viable sites. You can see we already have 75,000 dams in the United States. We're blocking 600,000 miles of river. And when you build a dam and create a reservoir, you're going to have evaporation occur because you have more surface area behind the dam. So sometimes that can be a problem depending on where the dam is constructed. And as I said, most of them are getting old and are requiring major cost input at this point to upgrade them and improve the efficiency and fix things that are breaking. So let me show you some real life examples of those pros and cons. This is the largest dam in the world. It's the Three Gorges Dam. As I said earlier, you had to move 1 million people plus out of the way. That picture on the bottom left, it's kind of hard to tell from that angle, but that span is over 1 mile long to give you a sense of scale. Because you have recreation and power there, we have seen major urbanization occur around the shores of the dam now as well. Here you can see some of it. See the little towns and roads and people that have started to build up around the dam and the reservoir. Okay, another place that's significant is the Pacific Northwest in the United States, mostly Washington, but all the way up into Canada and even into Oregon. This is the most dammed river system in the entire country. There's something like over 200 dams just on these 2-3 rivers alone here, the Snake and the Columbia. And so they've had, over the years, they've had all kinds of protests or on both sides. People want the cheap power. They want the recreation spots. Ecologists are worried about the salmon. Think of the fishing industry in Seattle, the famous fish market where they throw the fish. That's the salmon industry is a gigantic economic factor in that state. And once again, these fish have to be able to swim upstream to spawn. And so how they've dealt with that over the years has been an engineering challenge. What was first developed was called a salmon ladder. And you can see how it operates. It's actually pretty ingenious design. The salmon are capable of jumping over these little steps. and that gives them a path to go around and over a dam. So depending on the height of the dam, this might be a viable option. But as you saw in the video that was playing at the start, uh, another choice is the now new and improved salmon cannon, which replaces the salmon ladder. There's actually been a big push to tear down a bunch of dams in that river system now. We're getting to the point where they're old and we really don't rely on hydroelectric power all that much. So they're finding with wind and solar, they can actually replace what the dams provided. Big controversial dam in in Egypt. This is one that blocks up the Nile, and they had a dam there at one point, and they had to build a bigger one to provide for all the energy and needs that they have in Cairo. But think about building a dam in a very arid region, a desert. When you flood that river and create this big reservoir, what you have now done is created a giant magnet for the sun to evaporate water. And so they're actually getting 50% less water moving through that dam than they thought they were going to get. And so they're not producing as much electricity because of it. And if you've ever been at the beach and you've tried to dig a sand castle near the shore, you know that in a sandy area where you have water, sand likes to flow back in. They've had gigantic sediment problems build up behind the dam because of how sandy it is. And then just last year, about a year ago, February 9th, this article ran in New York Times. So Egypt's not the only country that benefits from the Nile, right? They farm up and down this entire riverbed. And you can see that Ethiopia down here, which has had many, many political and socio-economic problems over the years, they are building their own big dam on the Nile River. And Egypt is mad about it. They think that it's going to ruin the flow of water that powers their dam. They're not going to get nearly as much water. So it's a big international concern, the damming of the Nile River. Certainly we don't have those issues here in the United States. We all get along, right? Well, it turns out that one of our oldest dams, in 1931, we built the amazing Hoover Dam that you see down there on the bottom. And it has, over the years, decimated the lower flow of the Colorado River. Because it's not just the Hoover Dam, they've built other dams on this watershed as well. So you can see over the years as we go through different climate events and droughts, this river system is really struggling. In fact, it used to flow all the way to the Pacific Ocean and it would exit down in Mexico. That is where the Colorado River now ends. It does not have enough water to flow all the way to the ocean. And it's been this way now for a couple of years. Every once in a while, for one reason or another, they sometimes open up some of the dams, let a bunch of water flow through, and it every once in a while reaches the Pacific Ocean again. But I think it's, on one hand, it's kind of beautiful to see what nature does when a river stops. But the environmental side of me realizes how damaging this is, that water no longer reaches where it's supposed to. This is Lake Mead behind Hoover Dam. And you need a certain water pressure to spin the turbines. Well, the West has gone through pretty extreme droughts the last 10, 15 years. And they've had some relief recently, but we started to notice the water level dropping. And you can see just how dramatic it is. Here's another nearby lake in California, a dam and a reservoir. This is what it looked like in 2011. And get ready to be shocked because 3 years later, it's gone. They went through such an extreme drought, you're not producing electricity at this point. The dam is worthless. Okay, and unfortunately, I could continue and show you more dramatic pictures of what this drought did out in California. Some news stories that are recent. A new study found that hundreds of active plants are making a worse impact on the climate than fossil fuels. But I thought that dams were zero emissions. It turns out that when you dam a river, you flood plant-based ecosystems. They decompose in that reservoir and release methane gas, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So technically, it's not the dam releasing emissions, but the effects of the dam are. And then here's the other big problem with cost and infrastructure. Since 2008, at least 10 dam failures have each killed 10 or more people. It doesn't sound like a ton, but here's a dam collapse that killed 40 people, 6,000 homeless. Another dam in Kenya killed 48. When a dam fails, that is a gigantic problem on multiple levels. But we don't have to worry about that in the United States, right? This is the Oroville Dam in California. This is its spill causeway. So they can open these gates when they need to release extra water. And you can see that the concrete of the spillway started to erode one year. It was about 2-3 years ago. And so water was getting out to the side and eroding away the land that holds back the reservoir. Now, at first glance, this looks kind of bad and terrible. Do you notice those are people right there on the left? That's a crew that is examining the damage. In fact, look at that. To give you a sense of just how big this dam is, you put people down in that hole and they look like tiny little ants. I don't think I want to be one of the people whose job it is to crawl down in there. Right, a dam is failing and you're going to go crawl on top of it. You can see he's tethered, but still dangerous. Well, they did have to open up the spillway at one point, and you can see the water that rushed out. Remember the power of water, Mr. Gropp's Niagara Falls story. Instantly started carving away and eating away at this hillside, which once again is helping hold back all the water. What's the big deal? Well, here's the spillway, and here's the actual dam, which I hadn't shown you yet. The land that's getting eaten away is right in between that. So if that caves, this whole thing comes down. Why do we care? Because there's a town right here. There's a town downstream. They would be gone. Literally, wipe them off the face of the earth. They evacuated them. At some point, they called it and they said, you guys got to get out of here. And they evacuated like 3 or 4 towns downriver that were going to be affected by this. So we moved thousands of people out of the way until they could get this thing secured and fixed. And there's what it looked like after some of the erosion that occurred, and they closed the spillway. There you can see the dam off to the side. So dams are pretty great in terms of energy production for a lot of reasons, but you can see they are loaded with problems as well.